2, 1. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining our COVID-19 Financial Oversight Committee meeting. Appreciative of you all being here second time this week. For starters, we do have our agenda and obviously our WebEx. So if I could get a motion to proceed electronically.
Sean Henry, I would like to make a motion for us to proceed electronically in accordance with the governor's outline, where having a meeting in person would constitute a danger or risk to all of us. I humbly request us to do this electronically. I made
I heard a second. So
this is Alex Dickerson, legal counsel. Mr. Henry, can I add as a friendly amendment that the proposed agenda constitutes essential business?
And I would like to add an amendment to my motion that it constitutes essential business.
But I especially like the humbly requested part. I would like that to be included in the notes. That was very good.
Well, I have to add that because I rarely humbly request anything.
I heard a second, so if there are any questions, I'm going to go ahead and take a roll vote for us to proceed electronically. Sarah Finley?
Aye.
Councilmember Gamble?
Aye.
Sean Henry?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnston?
Aye.
Vonda McDaniel?
Aye.
And Councilmember Sepulveda?
Aye.
I'm going to take it. Oh, and Junata Becco?
Aye.
Excellent. I'm just going to take one check to make sure I didn't miss anybody who's dialed in. Yeah, okay, so we have everybody. So that is, we have 6 present, 6 in favor, 0 against. Okay, we will go right into then the agenda is fairly short on items, but might be long on discussion. I'm going to first ask if there are any specific questions on the interim reports from our nonprofit partners. We're also welcome to come back to that. I'm happy to open up any discussion. If there weren't specific questions, we can maybe open them up and go through them given if we have time at the end after the resolutions.
Hi, Mary Jo.
Councilmember Gamble? Yeah.
Yes, I didn't notice the report from Pathway Lending. Is that forthcoming or did I miss that?
So we're on a little bit of an odd cycle, and I've thought about asking maybe as that becomes maybe a primary item for this committee, but Pathway Lending with the small business and live music grants and Second Harvest are on the other weeks. You know, they're bi-weekly, and it just kind of depended on when they received their funding as to when they submitted their first report. So that's why those two were not included for this week because they reported last week.
So since next Thursday is Thanksgiving and I am assuming we're not meeting,
correct,
will you be able to get that report before the December 1st council meeting?
Yes. In fact, I could just reach out and ask for every one of our nonprofit partners to submit on Tuesday of next week, so that I could get them all pulled together and send you an email on Wednesday, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, why don't we do that? They've all been really good and really responsive, so I don't think that would pose any problems if we give them enough heads up, given they might have some staff out for the holiday. But I will make sure then that I send to the committee report on 11/25, and we'll just have everybody report. So even those that reported today will have report again, and I'll let them know. I'll be the bearer of the good news. All right, just making notes so I don't forget.
Hey, Mary Jo, this is Sarah. Since you're going to be reaching out to all of them, I think that it's implied by the different reports that we've already seen today, but just to confirm with each that they do not anticipate an issue with using the resources made available to them before the deadline. Because if any do have an issue, because there's still quite a bit to be expended in some of the folks, just to kind of double check that.
Will do. Okay. All right. And like I said, if we have time, we can come back to those. Why don't we start with the resolution, which will actually be a substitute for MNPS. And I'm a little handicapped today with just one screen. So I'm going to have to go back and forth a little bit. But we've got the substitute, and let me just kind of run through, if you all have the draft, as a reminder of kind of walking through it. It even kind of walks through it on a chronological order, that in June, the council previously approved $24 million for student laptops and hotspots. Subsequent to that approval, Metro Nashville Public Schools has been awarded $10.7 million between two different grants for laptops and hotspots. The committee, reviewed that and considered that now that they have that supplemental funding, they don't need the full 24 for just those two items. MNPS came back to the committee and did present a need for an expansion of those funds, which would then include additional laptops for teachers, the virtual curriculum, as well as school supplies for learning at home. We did deem those to be eligible expenditures with the CRF funds. We did say we would consider, and in fact we have in a subsequent resolution to come, additional funding for MNPS. And we are asking if they don't need the full 19 million for those items listed, that they would return additional funds. So the resolution states that $19 million will be funded to MNPS for the use of the funds for the items noted. And again, the return. So that is what this does, what this resolution will provide for MNPS, and it replaces the previous funding of 24 million. Councilmember Gamble, is your hand from this time or last time?
New hand, thank you.
Good.
It's related to the resolution, and thank you, Alex and Councilwoman Johnston, for taking the lead on this. I do have a couple of suggestions and questions about paragraph 4 and then the subsequent 2 paragraphs after that. So with the whereas MNPS has informed the committee that MNPS has paid for additional and immediate needs related to COVID-19 from other sources of state and federal funding, including the student laptops. But now, if I'm not mistaken, the teacher laptops and the curriculum were the expansion items that they asked for in the First Amendment. Is that correct? And the initial resolution was for student laptops and hotspots.
Yes.
And then the expansion. But we're putting them all in here like that was in the initial. So I, suggest that.
Well,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. The reason that it still has student laptops in there is because from the original 24 million, that original estimate didn't include the charter schools. So there were actually an expansion of use of funds on student laptops, and they ordered additional hotspots after the original estimate also. So I think it's, I don't think it's wrong to have that in there. Alex, I don't know if that makes a difference from a legal perspective, but I think from an actual what was originally thought to be purchased with the 24, which versus what actually was purchased, all of those items were in the expanded use.
So all of these items were purchased with the 24.
They were all purchased with a combination of funding. I think that's what's gotten a little confusing.
Right.
Is that
that's where it's not clear here for me, and I would I guess recommend that we make it clear, because I'm anticipating a lot of questions about this from the council members.
Yeah, what would let me bring it back.
The better.
Where do you have a suggestion for the?
Well, yes. Either we say for the MNPS has informed the committee that MNPS has paid for expenses. Paid for, I guess. What is this request? I don't know what to call it. Request for student laptops, hotspots, and requested an expansion of student laptops, teacher laptops, hotspots, pre-K curriculum for students learning at home. So, I mean, maybe that's as simple as an expansion of services, but it appears here that it doesn't distinguish the expansion of service from the original request, and it makes it look like the original request included this, and we're because we're making the reduction, the recommendation to reduce the funding, I think we should make it clear that if we do say in the second sentence, the committee recognizes that these needs represent, I can't hear you, I don't know whose mic that is, that the additional request is an expansion of the initial request, so that it doesn't look like the initial 24 is being used, was spent on all of these items when they weren't. They were spent on what was initially requested, and then they came back with an expanded request. So maybe expanded request is the word that's missing.
Councilmember Gamble, would it work if we just said, instead of including additional student and teacher laptops, if we said including expansion of uses to include additional? Okay, all right.
That would be great. Thank you. And then on that paragraph, not the one, whereas the committee recognizes that these needs represent additional eligible expenses, and whereas the committee will address additional needs of MNPS related to COVID-19 pandemic as presented by MNPS in a new special review revenue reserve fund as outlined in RS 2020, whatever the other resolution number is. Can we add that? That was something that I kind of suggested last meeting, that we say that, I mean, because this in the future is somewhat general, whereas we are actually addressing additional needs. The committee will address additional needs of MNPS or related to, will address additional needs of MNPS related to COVID-19 pandemic as presented by MNPS in a new special revenue reserve fund as outlined in RS 2020. Can we say that legally, I guess?
Yeah, it's Councilmember Gamble. This is Alex Dickerson again. So I'm going to change it to, so it says, whereas in the future, the committee will consider additional.
Take out in the future.
Okay. Yeah. Whereas the committee will consider additional needs of MNPS related to COVID-19 pandemic as presented by MNPS in a new special revenue reserve fund to be addressed by concurrent resolution. We don't know the RS number yet, so it's kind of hard to put that in there.
Yeah, I noticed that in the other resolution, it just says RS 2020 XXX for now, so maybe that'll suffice until we get the number. But thank you, yes, those were my only two.
Yeah, so we're going to take out the in the future and can probably say the committee has considered.
Right.
And then what you said, Alex, about being specific about the concurrent resolution.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands. Were there any other questions, comments, concerns? I think we're going to be in good shape today because we really talked about these quite a bit at our Tuesday meeting, but wanted you to see them and kind of make sure that we captured all of your thoughts. So thank you very much for those additional comments, Councilwoman Gamble. Seeing no hands, I'm going to then direct us to the, I'm calling it the public salaries resolution. Let me pull that up.
Hey, Mary Jo, this is Alex from Legal. Would
Yeah.
you mind just go ahead and taking a vote on this language so we have that official?
Oh, absolutely. How did I forget that? Thank you. Okay. And I'm just going to double check attendance real quick because I see. Okay. All right. So again, thank you all. You have the proposed resolution in front of you with our substitute for MNPS funding. I will take a roll vote for the recommendation to the council. Sarah,
Can we go ahead and get someone to move and second it?
I move to accept the resolution for MNPS, the substitute for MNPS CARES funding as substituted with recommended changes today. Okay, I move that.
I'll second that. This is Sarah Finley.
great. Seeing no other hands for questions or discussion, I will now take the vote. All right, Sarah Finley.
Aye.
Councilmember Gamble.
Aye.
Edward Henley.
Aye.
Sean Henry.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnston. I see you're on mute, so we might have you go one more time. I'll come back to Councilmember Johnston. Oh, there you are.
And that's what he's saying.
I missed it. What was the last part, Councilmember Johnston?
The president of our neighborhood association.
All right. Let's see. Vonda McDaniel.
Aye.
Junad Odebeko.
Aye.
And Councilmember Sepulveda.
No.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 in favor, 1 against. The motion passes. Okay. All right. Now we will look at the public salaries expenditure. So again, a brief overview of what was discussed and included in this resolution is that the remaining funds, again, assuming the substitute that we just reviewed passes, then the remaining funds are 29.8 million. And so what this resolution does is recommends expenditure of that 29.8 million on public safety salaries, thereby essentially freeing up and creating savings in the general fund budget, which would then be used to establish a new special revenue reserve fund for the purpose of continuing the expenditures to respond to the coronavirus pandemic. The continued expenditures include $20 million for the city's emergency response. And we listed the typical expenditures that we've already been incurring. And then I may make let me keep going. And then the $5 million for MNPS to cover additional COVID-19 related expenditures. $3.8 million in additional funding for rent, mortgage, and utility to be administered by United Way, and an additional $1 million for small businesses to be administered by Pathway, using the same criteria that's been in place for each of those. The final component of this resolution addresses differences in the current estimates, not only in the 29.8 million, but the previous contracts and estimates that we have provided, as well as then any adjustments from our FEMA filings, that all of those adjustments, differences in actuals versus estimates would be included as part of this fund. And that after the response has been addressed and we have better idea of final numbers, that if there are remaining funds, they would be used for replenishment of Metro's emergency management infrastructure, as well as health department for any supplies, equipment, even fleet and technology needs. That is what you have in front of you. Let me go back to my screen. Any questions or comments? I have one. Go ahead, Councilmember Sepulveda. Oh, I thought I saw. No hand? Okay, Councilmember. Okay, Councilmember Gamble.
Thank you. Section 5, where it has the Metropolitan Council directs additional funding in the amount of $5 million from the new special reserve fund for metropolitan schools to cover COVID-related expenditures deemed eligible. Can we take out but not already included? Because that goes back to my earlier comment about the expansion of services that weren't included in that initial 24 million. So I'm not sure if we should say related expenditures deemed eligible, deemed eligible, but not covered in the, maybe but not covered in the expansion of the request in RS 2020 RX. I don't want it to be, because if they do need, because we're taking away funding that would have covered the curriculum and school supplies for learning at home, if they aren't able to get other funding to supplement that, and then they want to come back with a request for funding for those things, then it would be excluded the way that it reads now. So how can we state it so those things would not be excluded, those expanded items?
So I'm not sure I'm 100% tracking. Let me clarify. I guess what the intention of this, and so let's make sure we have it clear to your point. Right now they have $19 million to spend on student and teacher laptops, hotspots, digital curriculum, and school supplies for at-home use. If they decided they wanted to use some of this $5 million for the nurses that will be in schools, through the end of the school year, or if they wanted to use it for additional technology, or they had to buy another piece of digital curriculum, like this would cover all of those. The but not already included was intended to expand the use of funds.
Yeah, but it also excludes, because I guess the way that I'm see it is that the 11 million that they were able to use from the state on laptops and hotspots or whatever, they had initially requested to use that entire amount towards the curriculum, school supplies, and we decided to reduce that by half. So now they're going to have to find funding somewhere else to supplement that other half. And if they don't, they still need that. So I'm saying we're saying, but not already included. We will be including it. So if we didn't, so if that makes sense.
It does. I'm with you because it was not intended to prevent them from spending on those items. So what if we say deemed eligible, but not limited to the items?
Okay, I like that. That
I think, is that what we're getting?
Yes, that gets it.
Yep, I'm with you. It's always interesting how one person reads it one way or the other, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Alex, did you get that? We'll say, but not limited to.
Okay, this is Alex. Can you read that whole sentence how you'd look on it? Because I got a little confused on it.
Yep. Okay. So Councilmember Gamble, stop me if I'm wrong. The Metropolitan Council directs additional funding in the amount of $5 million from the new Special Revenue Reserve Fund for Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools to cover COVID-19 related expenditures deemed eligible, but not limited to those already included in RS. I don't know if we're going to say included in RS 2020 XXX or in the concurrent resolution.
It'll be substitute resolution RS 2020-611.
Got it. So we're just related expenditures deemed eligible, but not limited to those already included.
Okay, got it.
That cover it, Councilmember Gamble?
That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, Sarah Finley.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Jo. I just wanted to kind of clarify in section 4, in terms of directing the $20 million, the including but not limited to means that really none of it has to go to any of these listed items. So I was just kind of curious as to how that would really work and how these monies would ultimately be allocated, because I feel like we sort of show an intent to have it cover these things, but there's nothing that requires it to cover these.
You're right, and that's a good point. I don't know if we need to refer to expenditures that previously approved under the other, but we've always just given these. I happen to notice, just as I was reading through this now, one item that we have been approving, which is enabling telework capabilities. And so these are the expenses that we've been spending it on. So I don't know if we want to say for the city's continued emergency response, including, I think it's important to have the including but not limited to, because there are times when something comes up that wasn't originally anticipated. I can give an example. We had recently, with our court system needing video technology, different than you all heard from the police department that wanted some video technology for training. We didn't go through with that, but the courts actually had to have it to operate. It wasn't really an enhancement. It really was a requirement because of COVID. So we put that under kind of that telework capabilities so that we could keep the court system, running. So I think that would be one addition that I would add is to increase telework capabilities. That is a specific line item within the U.S. Treasury guidance. But that covers just about everything. I do understand and appreciate the concern. I guess maybe, let me go back, I'm struggling with one screen today. If there is something to say of the new Special Revenue Reserve Fund is appropriated for the city's emergency response expenditures.
Related to COVID-19.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's Jennifer Gamble. I was going to suggest that we specify related to COVID-19 or COVID-19 related expenditures. Emergency responses to COVID-19 related expenditures. So that's why it is specific to COVID only. And I agree with Sarah. We probably need to be specific because that's something that came up in the council meeting, that this reserve fund, once it's coming from the budget and not necessarily has the same restrictions as the federal dollars, we'll need to put those restrictions on ourselves to make sure that the funding goes directly to what it needs to go to cover COVID. So I agree. We need to add some language. Maybe it's specific COVID-19 related expenditures.
Mary Jo, you're muted. This is Alex.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so looking at the document then, Alex, if you could, in that second line item of section 4, we would want to say is appropriate for the city's COVID-19 emergency response expenditures, including but not limited to, and if I may add another bullet point, which would include increasing telework capabilities. All right, let me switch back. Any other questions? I don't see Sarah, still a hand. Anything further? Okay. Okay, so with those two changes, does anybody have any other questions, comments, or ready to make a motion?
As Jennifer Gamble, I'll be happy to make a motion if we're ready.
I'm ready.
I motion that we move the resolution unnamed to appropriate $29,822,775 in CARES Act funding to certain accounts for the benefit of various metropolitan government documents as outlined with suggested changes today.
Do we have a second? Thank you. All right, seeing no other hands or discussion, I'm going to go ahead and take a roll vote. Sorry. Sarah Finley?
Aye.
Councilmember Gamble?
Aye.
Edward Henley?
Aye.
Sean Henry?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnston?
Aye.
Vonda McDaniel?
Aye.
Junad Odebeco? Try one more time.
Aye.
Yes, thank you. And Councilmember Sepulveda?
Aye.
Excellent. Okay, so we are at 8 in favor, 0 against. Motion passes. No, that's a big deal. Thank you. That's good work. Did anybody want to go back to any of the reports? I didn't want to rush us through. I just wasn't sure how much discussion we would have on our resolutions.
Councilwoman Gamble speaking. I didn't have any specific questions about the reports that we received. It looked like everyone was on track. I think which one? The Entrepreneur Center still had about half of the money left. So I'm not sure how they're tracking. It'll be maybe they can give us some more detail in the second report as to if they believe they'll be able to spend $300,000 by the 31st. And then also really interested in getting a list of agency or companies, businesses that have been served by Pathway Lending. There have been a lot of questions about the minority participation in that, making sure that we are meeting at the very least, our 30% minority goal for those grant funds, and a list of agencies.
Yes, and the good news is I actually received that list today. So I will get that out to you. I didn't see it in my, sorry, I apologize. I didn't see it in my email before I sent you all the documents for today, but I had made that request after council meeting and got that today. So I will share that with this committee. And then if we want to send it to council office or I think let me ask this question, if the committee so agrees. Once I'm going to ask for all those reports, and we'll have a summary of report from everybody on Wednesday. I think I said that was the 25th before Thanksgiving. Checking my calendar. And I will summarize that rather than a lot of separate emails. Why don't I summarize that into one report and make sure that the council office also receives that to send out to the entire council ahead of the December 1st meeting. That would give plenty of time for review of that. So I will.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Thank you. That would be great.
I think that would be helpful. Okay, so they will have that, and then we would be scheduled for December 3rd. I think we will keep that meeting on the calendar. If nothing else, we'll have reports to look at, but we'll have all the feedback from the December 1st meeting. So at this point, that agenda will be pretty open because I think we won't know what next steps are until we know what happens at the council meeting. If there are, questions, any deferrals, anything like that happens, then we can address that as a committee on the 3rd. So we will keep that meeting. And if there's anything else that, transpires between now and then, I will certainly keep you posted. But I think we have covered our agenda. Councilmember Johnston, I see a hand.
To what date did we extend this committee? Was it for some reason December 15th is in my brain, but I'm.
You're right. You're exactly right. December 15th.
Do we need to extend that because I'm just wondering because if I don't know that we would have another meeting before, after the December 1st meeting. I don't know. No, I guess we would meet on the. We'll meet on the
3rd and the 10th.
Right, but we won't have a council meeting if we wanted another council meeting if we wanted to extend past the 15th, is what I mean. You know what I mean? If we don't introduce it to extend on the 1st, we won't.
I'm with you. Okay, you're saying if we want to have any. Now I'll tell you what it specifically says. It's about final recommendation not later than December 15th. There's the committee can meet, but we wouldn't be making any more recommendations to council. We may be reviewing reports and making sure that we're working in reviewing the contract to wind down properly through the end of the year.
Okay.
But what I'm tracking with you in that I think if we don't know what will happen on the 1st, we don't know what will happen on the 15th. If for some reason we don't have a final passed resolution, then this committee, it would have to come back to this committee. So part of that would have to be the council then granting an extension.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're getting at. I'm not sure exactly how to make that happen unless we need to introduce a resolution for the December 15th meeting that says if there is not a final spending made, then the committee continues. What would that look like, Alex?
That could be introduced now. We could draft that now. It can be introduced on the 15th. Either way, it would be. I think you just withdraw it if it's accomplished.
Okay, and I think I saw an email yesterday. We have until December 4th. Is that right? For the 15th? Oh, that wasn't the email. sorry, but we have until the 4th. So when we met on the 3rd, we could, if we, based on the results from the 1st, if we saw a need,
Yeah. Okay.
we could get that. Does that work?
Yeah. That works.
Sarah Finley?
Two questions. First of all, when will we get our first report on sort of the arts organizations and the farmers market? Will that be also before the next council meeting, or will that be later?
That's a great question. I don't think we will have those, but well, I know we won't have either one. The farmers market is going, both of those contracts are still being finalized. Farmers market was just Tuesday night. So I sent that in on Wednesday. I should get a draft contract back, and we're getting pretty fast at this, but they won't have their funding for, before the end of the month. So we won't have a report on those two. That's a great point.
Okay. The other question.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say the one thing for those two contracts, they have both essentially been set up to be fully allocated among all of the applicants, versus if you think about the way the small business and live music venue, those were an unknown number of applicants with not a for sure known dollar amount of receipt, versus the farmers market and the nonprofit arts, I expect to be fully utilized, because they already, in the case of the farmers market vendors, they know how many vendors. For the arts, they did open it to other nonprofit arts, but they have a pretty good idea of what that total population was. So just a reminder that we don't have any reason to believe there will be any unspent funds on December 28th, even though the funds are getting out pretty late.
Yeah, that's helpful. I appreciate that reminder. So is there anything right now that we have in place, or we need to put something in place before we sort of cease as a committee? For instance, the Entrepreneur Center, there is a chance that they're not going to get everything expended. There may be a chance for others, I don't know. But what happens to those monies if they are not expended? Is there anything in a resolution that dictates that? Because if not, one possibility would be to go into the special reserve fund, but the way that would be set up is that it would be used for Metro's sort of emergency response efforts, as opposed to, let's say, for additional rent and utility assistance or other things. And so do we have anything that sort of closes that loop in case there are some funds available at the end of December?
Yes, in fact, that paragraph that you just referenced is where, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because I do think it's really important for it to be clear. The first part of section 8, where it says the council directs any unused portion of the above 29.8 million, as well as formally approved CRF funding allocations that are underspent. Yeah. So that would include all of the nonprofit contracts. It would also include the 48.8 million that's been allocated to the city. So if that 48.8 ends up being more than what was needed, anything in excess would go in there. At this point, I don't see that having excess. So not a huge concern there, just as our nonprofit partners seem to be utilizing all of the funds. But that is exactly what that section 8 paragraph is set up, is to make sure that this committee doesn't have to come back to decide what to do with any of the excess funds. And it's also possible that if there's an excess fund from the 48.8 million, and then but then the 29 wasn't enough, so that kind of, this really becomes the special reserve fund really becomes kind of your plus and minus to make sure that we don't return any funds to the federal government, to make sure that we have enough to meet all of the emergency response.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. I'm glad you pointed that out, because when I first read it, I was thinking we were still just talking about the 29.8, but actually now that I read it a little bit more closely, I realized it's talking about funds even in addition to the 29.8 that would go into this if they were not spent.
You're on mute, Mary Jo.
Yes, sorry. I was calling on you. I saw your hand, Councilmember Gamble.
Yes, thank you. It was suggested by the Council Pro Tem, Councilman Bob Mendez, that the COVID-19 Financial Oversight Committee have a special called meeting between the 1st and the 15th to give council members an opportunity to ask questions, answer questions of the full committee. I think it's a great idea. I'd be happy to coordinate that meeting. Just wanted to get a sense from you all, if you think it's a good idea, and if you think you would be able to participate in that meeting. It would probably need to be, well, I guess it could still be 12 o'clock lunchtime, but since this is the time that we've had our regular meetings, and it maybe even could be that December 10th meeting. But the assumption is that these resolutions probably won't pass on December 1st because there'll be a lot of scrutiny and conversation about them, and that they'll get deferred, and then we can have a full special meeting inviting all of the council members to participate in that meeting before the December 15th meeting, in hopes that they would pass then. So just wanted to get a sense from the committee on your thoughts on a special call meeting where we would invite all the council members to participate.
Couldn't we invite them to the meeting on the 10th? Or even on the 3rd?
Yeah, but that's what I just said.
Oh.
That's what I said. We meet on the 10th. So that
yeah, but so at that point, it's not really a special called meeting. It's just, hey, we're meeting.
Well, it would be special in the fact that we're inviting all of them to it. That's all.
And it could also be the 3rd. I don't know if that's better and different. My thought was just that if we needed to make any changes, it would just give us a little bit more time, or if we need to do
idea. Yeah, you're right, because you said that any amendments would need to be in by the 4th to get on the 15th calendar. Yeah, you're right. So we probably would need to have it
to not be late filed. Now, part of the benefit of having council members invited to the meeting is they would be aware of the discussion. So if it was a late file, but we're doing our best not to late file anything.
Alex, you have any insight or feedback on that, on the date?
This is Alex. Yeah, I think it would be better to do earlier so we have opportunities to amend. I agree with that. We say that we're trying our best not to late file. We do late file pretty regularly, and we've not been attacked for it, but I think it would be better to do earlier if possible.
This is Councilwoman Sepulveda. I would suggest not having it during our regular scheduled meetings. We have a lot of council members who this time would not work for them. Some have day jobs, some have children. We usually, as a council body, have our special called meetings late in the afternoon. So I would recommend that we might do that instead.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If we scheduled it for, say, there wouldn't be any other committee meetings on a Thursday. Is that correct? We're all Mondays and Tuesdays. Is that right? Okay. So I think as early as 4 o'clock, if we want to go later, would our committee members be able to participate at 4 o'clock? So we'd be looking at 4 o'clock on Thursday, the 3rd.
this is Ed Henley speaking. I will actually be traveling, but time difference won't be an issue, so I should be able to call in.
That would be wonderful. Sorry for the kind of logistical challenge, but that would be much appreciated. I don't see any other hands for concern. So I think that we can go ahead and schedule our next meeting then will be December 3rd at 4:00. I'm gonna write all this down. And we will work on getting an invitation to the full council should they want to join and ask questions. And that time-wise, they will have already seen the two resolutions at the Tuesday meeting on the 1st. Okay. Seeing no other hands, are there any other questions, comments, anything we need to cover? We have our agenda, which is really just response to any December 1st questions for December 3rd. And that would be it. We would actually adjourn before 1:00 today. How about that? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.